We are still, this is the July 20th, 2021 select board planning board meeting. I am your Master of Ceremonies, Dee Jarius. Chair, our usual Master of Ceremonies, Brian Zakelli, is off this evening. We are holding out just a couple more minutes to see if our of Sally Dale will join us this evening. Since I am a neophyte at the controls, it's maybe an interesting night. For those of you who are used to having a chat involved, I cannot seem to be able to turn chat function on. So if you need to get my attention, please wave at me. Let me see, I think I will. People should be able to unmute themselves now. So as I said, let's hold out just a couple more minutes and we'll continue. I'm not officially starting the meeting just yet. And let me see if I can make this. Okay, well, why don't we start? There's someone in the waiting room who is called, well, here's Ruth, Beth Rudolph, rather. Ruth. I tell you, doing this is difficult. And there's someone who I do not recognize who doesn't have a real name, and I cannot ask them who they are. I will admit them, and if necessary, I will remove them. Hopefully, I will be able to do that. Okay, so I have turned back on the, I will have to unmute you when I call on you. I apologize because I don't know who this person is. So let me begin recording.
Can you hear me?
I can. Who was that?
Sounds like Sally.
Sally, is that you?
Diab, can you hear me?
I can hear someone. Who is asking?
This is Sally Dale, and when I try to start my video, it says that I'm unable to start my video because the host has stopped it.
Okay, that's really odd.
It might be because I was actually in the meeting before it started, so then I left the meeting and rejoined, and you still have my, I don't know if you, are you the host?
I am the host, but I don't have anything in here which says that you can't.
Let me try to get out of the meeting and come again.
I can't start my video either, DM.
I Ching, I just saw you before.
I know. I turned it off because my son was in the frame.
No, I understand. I do not see a.
There must be a host functionality that you see when you're host that we never see when we're never host.
Yes, there is, but I don't know if it. Please try your videos now.
Start video. There it is. It worked. You did it, Diab.
Okay, well, that made absolutely no sense. It said start video, but it didn't say allow participants to show video. I thought it meant people would be able to play videos from across the web. Okay, well, and Sally, can you confirm what name you are coming in under?
Oh, that's a silly name. Let me change the name because it says it's O2. Let me rename.
Okay.
I am not prisoner number 020272.
Okay, that's fine. As long as I know who you are, I will allow.
There you go. My true identity revealed.
Okay, so again, my apologies. We're going back 30 years in terms of people's abilities. I'm recording to the cloud. I am okay.
Recording in progress.
Excellent. Everyone, I hope heard that. So welcome to the July 20th, 2021 Planning Board meeting for the town of Winchester. Just to note that you are all being recorded, both by WinCam and on Zoom. Unfortunately, I don't know how to turn the chat on, so if you feel the need to say something, please wave at me, or if I don't see you, please politely say, hey, Diab, I've been waiting. So this evening, we don't have too many updates to go through. We have several meeting minutes to go through. Then we're going to have a presentation from a developer looking at the land up behind Mahoney's on Cambridge Street. And then we will dive into our continued story of the Master Plan Implementation Committee. And we will continue to talk also about our goals, priorities, and schedules, including some updates on fall town meeting article with respect to half stories, the definition thereof. And then we're going to have a discussion about hiring design consultants for FY22. And hopefully by then we'll be done by 10. I don't think that we will complete our Master Plan Implementation Committee discussion nor our goals, priority, or schedule, but hopefully we will make some headway. So you should note I left out Abbey Road. The Abbey Road item on our agenda has been postponed by agreement of all parties, so that will come up at a later date. Okay, so let's see, why don't we, because I've delayed a bit, why don't we jump right into the meeting minutes and let me bring those up. So we are looking at the meeting minutes for the, okay, now I have to do some screen sharing. Okay, let's just see if my computer will work. My apologies. So we're looking at first at the, I'm trying to find the June 8th one. Sorry.
There's 2 for June 8th.
Yes, I know. I have so many windows open right now. I'm trying to find them, and why don't I just reopen it? Nancy was kind enough to send me all of them, so let me grab the North Main Street one. Okay. And I will stop sharing, and then I'm going to reshare. I think I'm just going to share my screen, and I apologize for the mess. Yeah, I think it's just going to be easier. Okay, so hopefully what you see before you is the June 8th meeting. Is that what everyone sees?
Yep.
Okay, so why don't we, are there any significant edits that need to be made to this document, or is there a motion to accept it with Scrivener's errors?
I have very minor on page 2.
Okay, well, if it's minor, I think we can just, unless it's,
I just want to tell you what they are, so you don't, maybe they're not minor. Number 15, I think it says assign, not, I mean, I think it means to say assign, not a line.
okay, yep, that sounds right.
And I didn't understand number 11.
I do not understand that at all.
I'm trying to put it in the context, like warm my brain up to the conversation, and it.
I wonder if it's just crosswalks and like curbs and things like that.
Yeah, I think that certainly sounds reasonable.
Should the minutes say comment to be clarified in future or something like that? I mean,
I think if you wanted, we could, you know, just figure out what it is and update it. It's just essentially this was slides on the screen, correct?
right. Each of these polls, a poll provided, all received most positive support except for number 4. And then I don't know why that divided
Well,
them into 2 groups. Oh, I see. The first group, those that relate to encourage investment, and those that relate to alignment of investment. So I would recommend to Nancy, if you could just put alignment of investment above the second group and the other header above the first. That probably would make it easier to read these. But so if this is an alignment of investment, which I'm not really sure I understand what that means. I do know he divided them into 2 groups. I thought one was
right.
to encourage developers to.
But we're not going to resolve this right now. So if there is a question about these minutes and people don't feel comfortable voting them in because of uncertainty, then we should just note that and then have it corrected and move on.
I can call Josh tomorrow. Would that be helpful?
Yeah, so do we want to just leave this for our next meeting and get it so that it's completely,
I think that would be fine with me if anybody else has.
everyone else okay with that?
Yeah, I do remember that this meeting had way fewer participants, and I wonder if that should be included somehow of the total responses.
Well, I mean, this is just minutes, so.
Yeah, right. So like,
Why don't we do
And there's
this?
a list of attendees on the first page, so that's.
I understand that, but point 8, it seemed redundant. All received mostly positive support except for recommendations number 4 and 5, where the responses were more divided, with many opposed. And I just, isn't that a little bit redundant? If they were divided, there were some opposed
yeah.
and some for it. So I just don't want it to like kind of skew on the opposing side. That makes sense.
You said you do or don't want to skew it to the.
No, it's just say divided.
Divided. Okay, so I'm gonna.
Well,
You're
well,
suggesting to cross out with many opposed.
Well,
Yeah,
if we're
I do.
gonna move this off so that we get some corrections to this, why don't
Well,
we?
I can include that correction, and I can also just check with Josh tomorrow about what he thinks, and then I can. Am I allowed to send it out to the planning board in between meetings and ask them to accept the minutes between meetings?
The best thing to do is we'll just bring it up at another board and vote on it there.
Okay, good.
And if you want to, if there's concern about whether the responses are divided or opposed, there are numbers in the polls that could be put into the minutes. And that would, so just getting the hard numbers so we don't, so if there's a question about editorial
Okay.
content.
I'll
So
get
why
those-
don't we, so
I'll
we're
get
going,
those from Josh.
okay. So we're going to leave the June 8th North Main Street minutes for a later date after with some corrections. Now let us go to the June 8th Planning Board meeting. And okay, and this is our discussion with Mr. Gillespie and other developers on 10 Converse Place. And let me know if you can read this. Are there any comments on this?
I have comments, but I'm happy to defer for now to Cheryl and I Ching.
Yeah,
And-
Cheryl Li Ching.
I'm not sure was this the meeting that I was a part of?
This was not the meeting you were part of, so you can
No.
you can bow out gracefully, and then it's just I Ching. Anything you wanted to say?
June 8th. We're still on June 8th, even though the last one was also June 8th. Oh, because there were 2 meetings on June 8th. I see.
That's correct.
I'm sorry.
This was the one. This was the one where the developers for 10 Converse Place came.
Right.
I mean, if you're not ready to go over these minutes, we can move them to another date.
I would make a motion to move them to another date. Sorry.
Okay, so let's just, Sally, if
I do
you,
have edits, but if you don't want to take time in this meeting, let's do it the next time.
okay, yeah, let's
They're
just,
substantive, so.
yeah, since there are only 3 of us who can vote on this, and one of the members wants to move on, let us move on.
It is done.
And then let us open up, then we're on to, I already have that open. That will take forever, so let me cancel. So now we are looking at planning board minutes for June 22nd. And hopefully everyone can see those.
I thought we did those already. Let me see.
Well, it's after June 8th, so it's on the agenda
Yeah.
as,
All right, hold on.
and this was our first cut at the Master Plan Implementation Committee.
Oh,
If the board is not ready to approve these minutes, then just say so.
not ready.
Okay,
Sorry.
then we will move this to the next meeting, and I'm assuming the July 6th one will have the same response?
I don't know what happened. Was it in the packet?
I don't
Yes.
think it was in the packet.
Yeah,
I-
except Cheryl wasn't present for this one, so I don't know if we have enough votes. Is that we can
Well, there are 3, we just
Okay.
performed, so.
So July 6th, I was not present, but
that's-
the one before that, when we talked about the North Main Street, or I'm sorry, the one before that I was present, but
Right.
I did not receive these in the packet. I think
I
that
did not receive these in the packet either.
right. You have just sent them.
Yeah, so there was some confusing on my part where some of these, I believe that these 2, the 22nd and the 8th, or the 6th were not in the packet. There was confusion on my part as to whether or not, because they are on the agenda. So why don't we just acknowledge that not everyone is ready to review these, so we'll just move these on and move on with the meeting, if that's okay. It's not, we'll just deal with it our next time.
that's good with
Okay.
me.
So, best thing is to take things off the schedule. We can move up. So we are actually only 5 minutes behind now. That's what happens when you punt work. Okay, so the next thing on our agenda is a presentation by Ricky Bellevue, who's coming before the planning board to discuss and I can't move my windows anymore, who's going to discuss possible developments behind Mahoney's up in the Rocky Ledges. So the reason this is coming before this board is because in order to pursue this development, they need to put a new road into this property. And because of that, it comes under the subdivision regulations of the planning board. And in particular about this property is that the developer is requesting a waiver of the subdivision requirement for a through road. Our subdivisions state that there shall be no dead-end roads, no cul-de-sacs as it were. The reason for that is because one of the previous planning boards who put that in place was concerned that cul-de-sacs or dead-end roads created a disconnected community amongst those who are who live along the cul-de-sac, and they aren't connected to the neighborhoods around them. And so, Mr. Bellevue, could you please, your mic is on. Can you let me know how you wish to be addressed?
Yeah. Hi, board and everyone. My name is Ricky Bellevue.
I apologize.
We also have my attorney, Mark Vaughn, is on as well.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone.
Hi. So we have, what I'd like to do is, I don't think that I think this is sort of call it a pre-application meeting if you'd like. I think that what we're going to do is start a conversation about what you see as being what you would like to put on the land. I imagine that the planning board will have a short discussion after your presentation with some questions. And then I think that the planning board will take this up at another point to discuss amongst themselves, because I don't think we're going to have enough time tonight to go through a full discussion. And to be honest, I would like to have our town planner with us, since he knows the subdivision regs better than all of us. So why don't I let me try to make you co-host, and we've allotted 45 minutes for this discussion. Do you think that you could do your presentation in around 15 or 20?
Yeah, that shouldn't be an issue.
Okay, great. So let me attempt to make you co-host. So I will stop sharing.
Ricky, once you have that, if you wanted to maybe just pull the plan up, I'll maybe do a quick introduction and then turn it over to you, Ricky, if that works.
Perfect. Yeah.
Okay, so it doesn't want to. It's being recalcitrant. Okay. It doesn't want to let me stop sharing. There we go. Okay, so okay, you are now a co-host. And Mark, would you like me to make you a co-host as well?
No, Ricky's going to be the expert here in terms of the presenting of the slides, but I think that should work. But yeah, there we go.
Okay, so Mark, if you could introduce yourself.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. For the record, Attorney Mark Vaughn here tonight representing Ricky Beliveau in connection with this matter, and pleased to be before you all. Mr. Chairman, I think you did a very good job of kind of, segueing the conversation here, or beginning the dialogue. But Ricky has the property that is immediately behind Mahoney's and accessed off of Rocky Ledge Road under agreement, and is very interested in developing the property as a single-family subdivision. So this plan that you have before you on the screen is a conceptual layout of how that would, be set up. You can see it would be 6 homes that would come off of Rocky Ledge. Rocky Ledge is currently a stub road that exists today off of, I believe it's Wainwright. And there is one home that is accessed off of Rocky Ledge up on the left-hand side. I don't know if you want to point your cursor there. Yeah, there's a home there that has their access off of that stub road today. So the property is zoned for single-family residential use. It's in the RDA zone, and Ricky feels that the best use of this property and the use that's most consistent with the neighborhood and the surroundings would be a continuation of that single-family use. There are some challenges that are on that property that, in this particular instance, would pose issues in terms of providing a through connection down towards Socrates Way. Technically, it could be done engineering-wise, but it would be done at a considerable expense. But I guess more importantly, tremendous amount of blasting, alteration of the topography and the terrain in a manner that we don't think is necessarily desirable for the neighborhood and accomplishes a significant benefit. In fact, I think there's an argument that it could be the opposite of that in terms of the alteration of the terrain. So we did meet with the fire chief about a month ago, had a virtual meeting with the chief just to be able to discuss what the emergency fire requirements would be, and we're certain that we can satisfy those based on the plan that you see right now in terms of having a roadway that has adequate width and grade of the roadway. And according to the fire chief, that is what they require. They don't require having a second emergency access into the property. So that's not required from an emergency perspective. So, we do feel that this plan, satisfies the emergency access requirements as well. But but yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think that's really what we wanted to talk about is how, in this particular instance, before we put pen to paper and invest with an engineer, drawing up subdivision plan, all that goes with it, that we wanted to, get the board's take on that waiver, because it is, in our opinion, something very appropriate for this location, and consistent with the neighborhood. So, but let me turn it over to Ricky. I think it might be helpful if he could just walk through a few photos and really kind of zero in on the grade differential back there and the disruption that would cause.
Great, thanks, Mark. Yeah, so just give you guys a little bit of background on myself. I actually have been coming to Winchester for a long time. My uncle, Dan Beliveau, is a builder, has built a lot of homes in Winchester. He actually built some homes down on Socrates in this neighborhood. Back, 10, 15 years ago, I used to work for him doing, demolition and help him on his construction sites. And now that I've moved to town and that him and I, have become closer, I thought it'd be great to, an opportunity to work together and kind of take what I'm doing, in my business, and that we could actually, work together on a project. This was brought to me as an opportunity to do, a decent sized parcel of land where we could, do either some homes, or they were looking at it as another type of project. After looking at the site, I felt that, the best use would be to continue the development that had occurred down below on the lower streets here, and continue a dead end street into what would be an additional 6 homes. The site is very, the topography is very intense. You do have this upper level, which kind of works well for the 3 houses here. And I will take you through some photos to give you a sense of how it looks. But you come off Rocky Ledge, you have this upper section, which is nicely laid out where you could fit these 3 homes. And then you could bring the road gradually down to this lower level here where it levels out again, and you could do another 3 homes. So it kind of lays out nicely when you bring your engineers in here, with 2 different levels and not having to do a ton of blasting or over excavation. You could lay the houses out in these 2 sections, and have it work really nicely. When you start to look off of lot 6 here, this heads down to Mahoney's, these really tight lines on the topography map. Obviously, this is the cliff, right? So this is a cliff that drops down. That cliff carries along the side of the road here and then wraps down behind lot 5. And I'll get into some of these photos as well. You can see on the upper side here with the widely spaced lines, these lines are a much more flat grade, which works well for these, these homes. We do have this access point. So our parcel actually wraps around in this line here that we have under agreement. So to any access to Socrates would need to go through Mahoney's as an easement. We did, knowing the code, and we wanted to look at what the options were to do that. But to do something like that, we would have to actually bring this cul-de-sac down in about 10 feet, as well as the upper areas start to slope. And we did this with our engineers and walked through the site, which would cause, it would cause a lot of impact both to this area as well as the neighbors to make this site work with this rear access. The other major impact is to these homes down on Socrates. You're now trying to bring a new road that would mess up a lot of their landscaping and impact them directly. When we're trying to wrap this road up this mountain, it'd be almost impossible. And it would cause a lot of destruction to the existing landscape, which I know is something that's important in subdivision. You're looking to try to use the site as it lies. I have, while being on site, I've talked to neighbors around the site, and they were actually very receptive to these plans and this use. The main person I spoke to is up here, that was Joe, who actually owns the only home that's currently on Rocky Ledge. And when I showed him the plans, I was actually very surprised that his reaction was that he felt that it actually would continue the community to include him. And because he's all by himself on Rocky Ledge. And so he owns this property right here, which is currently on the dead end. But now to show you the a better sense of the property. Do you see my screen now?
Yep.
So what we did is we brought a photographer out to the site, and I know obviously it'd be great if you guys are out there walking it with me. It's a beautiful, beautiful property up on the hill here. So what we did is we did all these arrows kind of showing different angles to try to give you a sense as we walk through the site. So if you look down here, you'll see arrow 1. This is kind of looking from where the street would be going and then out towards the cliff. So it is very densely grown. It's actually crazy how we were there in the winter and it's very clear and open, and now it's much thicker. Another feedback we got from Joe was that there's actually been a lot of issues up here with people on the cliff and hanging out and kids, and he actually expressed that he has to call the cops a lot of times regarding issues with kids drinking in the area, and so that he was receptive to this would actually be used for something and not just open space up to a cliff. Now you're looking, this is number 2 here. This is also looking out on another angle onto the ridge. So this is looking up at the hydrant. So if you take spot number 2 arrow here, there's actually rocky ledge carry the road and the utilities carry up into the woods to about right here, which we're actually haven't figured out why the road continued but wasn't continued. But this is the hydrant that sits up at this area in the top corner, where we would continue our road and utilities would go up to that point. So that's currently where the road, although it doesn't go there, there is utilities to there, which is an interesting location for them to run water. There you can see another image of the hydrant. So now we have down the hill, so we're following along the road. And so this is looking, you can see the slight grade here that brings us down towards which would be our cul-de-sac. So this is image 3 or arrow 3. And then this is where you see right here would be kind of where the home would be placed. We are looking to have all these lots be compliant with the single family lot sizes and layouts. So the houses would be compliant on size, lot size. You need 20,000 square foot lots, and most of ours would be between 20 and 30. So we'd have some larger lots. This shows you an angle still looking down the road as you're heading down towards the cul-de-sac. This is where you actually have the existing road. So this is right where the cul-de-sac would land. So in the current design, we would place the cul-de-sac at the current height of the elevation where it actually naturally levels out. It would be our goal to have the cul-de-sac located exactly at that level and the homes off of it. This just gives you a sense of the existing road that we call it a road, but it's really just a dirt path. So image 5 is looking up at the rear of where the cul-de-sac would be. So as you can see, we have this extremely large drop from where the cul-de-sac would be down to the lower level. And this really shows you this rock ledge, which is, what we would want to avoid, right? We want to be keeping this up and re-supporting it. We don't want to be taking this down lower and causing that impact to the site. So this is that same different angle of this cliff that runs around where these homes would be. So this is another look up. You can see this is the large wall, which the plan would be to re-support this, as well as kind of have this be the back line of those properties. Another view of that. Okay, so now we're looking at 6. We're looking up. The cul-de-sac here will be up to our left, up on this hill. And now we're standing down below, looking up to where the cul-de-sac would be. So you can see now we're at a much steeper grade down below, and up on the left here is where the cul-de-sac would be located. I know it's kind of hard. We're trying to do our best to give you a sense of the landscape up here. So this is also 6. You can kind of see it up the banking. So now 7 is looking up this existing road that's used by Mahoney's to store plantings and other materials that they aren't using down at the facility. And it gives you an idea that there is this steep, narrow road that carves up here, and that then makes its way down. But it would not be able to be, this would not qualify for the requirement of the fire department. And one thing we asked them is, could this be an emergency road that doesn't, meet the requirements, and we could keep it very steep? They said no, that they would prefer to have no road off the back and just have the cul-de-sac on the upper level than have a road that wouldn't comply for their trucks to access. This is image 7. So you're seeing the road as it turns up. This is that Mahoney's, down on Mahoney's site. Sharp corner. More of that road. Now you've got image 9, which this is looking down from Mahoney's and trying to show you this cliff that is, so now we're on the lower level looking up, and this is extremely steep up to the upper level where the hydrant is and where the houses would be. It's very dense, so there'd be a lot of tree coverage and a lot of stuff between us and the Mahoney site. And so these houses would be up more in the neighborhood than on the Mahoney side of this with the steep cliff. This shows you another drop off where we're looking up towards where the cul-de-sac would be here. And this is just a large rock wall. The cul-de-sac would actually be up above this and the homes would be above this. So to bring the cul-de-sac down, obviously lots of impact to the site. Same here, it shows you this is the bottom corner of where the cul-de-sac would be. This would be, the homes would be up on top of this level, and then there'd be the cul-de-sac in behind it. So you'd be looking here, this would be the home sitting up on top of this area. And then you'd have about a 25,000 square foot lot, and then the cul-de-sac would be up in this area to the right. Another look at this steep rock wall. So this is the lower road that kind of winds its way down behind Mahoney's. As you can see, we're calling it a road. It's just a very steep path that is used for them with their tractors and other items to haul, landscaping material, plants up into this, up into the area here for storage. This is that steep road that runs down. So now 12, you're looking up. This is that, the idea of this is kind of giving you a sense of how steep and narrow this is. It's really almost for like an ATV or a tractor type of material, car. Wouldn't really, a tractor, not for a car. So looking up here, so you're at 12, looking up towards the house that would be up here. This is something that was really interesting. So, obviously we wanted to take and consider, and if we wanted to head out to Socrates, and if that's what we felt was the right thing to do. As you can see here, as you head out to Socrates, there's this gate, there's a lot of greenery, landscaping. This is just the Mahoney's property. And then if you see this landscaping, nice landscaping in the distance, that's actually located kind of right in this area. If you look at my cursor here and here, these homes have nicely landscaped along this very narrow path. A lot of that's actually on the Mahoney's property, but to do the road, you'd have to disturb all that instead of keeping it nicely landscaped. This just gives you some overhead shots of the parcel via a drone, and then kind of a looking out over the skyline and so this view is looking out of what you'd be seeing from these homes. Homes 1, 2, and 3 would all kind of be looking out at this from the upper cliff area. The lower homes would still have beautiful views of Winchester, looking out over the ball fields and out over the town, but they wouldn't have this same type of view that you get from these upper 3 lots. This shows you kind of this is the site here. There's a lot of other homes that have been built kind of along this ridge over the years. And then this is where you're coming into our site here. So this would be down near the cul-de-sac. And then this would be the upper lots. And then these other streets kind of wrap around the ledge up there. Really beautiful homes kind of all around this neighborhood. So this is kind of showing you, you've got the different houses here. Our site would be over here. You have us coming in, you have the cul-de-sac over on this side. And then you come in, and so this would be your access point right here. This is the Joe's house. This is Joe, who has the only house that is on the dead end street currently. And then this flows out this way. Home 1 would be back here. This would be here, 3 here, and then down to this area would be the cul-de-sac, kind of free flowing across this ridge. We have spoken to some of these neighbors, and that will be our next thing once we have more conversations with you guys, is to continue the conversations with all of our abutters regarding the plan to use this as single family and not as another type of project. We feel that continuing the feel of the neighborhood is the best use of this, and also how it's zoned is single family zoning. So this gives you a direct shot down on, kind of the ledge and how this would be, all the kind of the homes spread out throughout it. So it would look similar to this, right? So you've got the couple homes, the cul-de-sac, and then that runs out. Our cul-de-sac would be down here. The homes would continue up to here and then connect. So it'd almost be just like this, but down here and then up into here. So it kind of match like what you're seeing along the other areas of this site. So there's the cul-de-sac on the other side of the ledge. So you've got these 5 houses on the cul-de-sac that connects, and then you come up to our site. You have a cul-de-sac out here, and then a few homes around it. So yeah, I mean, I hope that gives you some sense of the parcel. It's a beautiful, beautiful location, and I think that it could be an amazing place for people to, raise families and have some beautiful homes there. I don't, we personally feel that the single family use is a great fit here, since that's what's surrounding it, and we'd like to hear your guys' thoughts.
Okay. Thank you very much. Why don't we let you continue to host in case one of the board members has a question that you can answer with your presentation. Why don't I see that Beth Rudolph of engineering is here, town engineer. Beth, were you here for this particular item on the agenda?
Yeah, I was just here to hear the presentation. Thank you.
Okay, so didn't have any comments. Okay, thank you. So why don't I let me just make a note that this board has granted a waiver in the recent past to a cul-de-sac, and that was for the Abbey Road development. That was a complex development which involved swapping land between the town and the developer. And one of the reasons that the waiver for the dead end was given was because the town ended up with a land which could be developed for 2 units of affordable housing. So there is a history of waivers, but the waivers do come with a compromise, let's call it, or a word that's similar to that. Anyway, why don't we open it up to the board? Who would like to go first?
I have a couple questions that just kind of come from my lack of knowledge. So in a development where the lots are going to be subdivided to 20 and 30,000 square feet each, can anyone tell me what the maximum footprint on the house would be?
The maximum footprint of the home?
Yeah.
It would have to just go, it would be the setbacks.
Setbacks, as well as like the amount of impermeable surface.
Right,
There's open space requirements and there's permeability requirements.
Yeah, so
Beth, do you know those?
No, I don't know the zoning requirements off the top of my head.
Yeah,
I have it in front of me. So the RDA zoning does, to whoever said there's, setback requirements, obviously those all apply. It's 20,000 square foot lots, 100 feet of frontage required. There's a lot width requirement, but I think to your specific question, there's a minimum percent of open area of 75%. Maximum hardscape percentage is 35%. So, obviously we would need to comply with those specific requirements in terms of whatever the dimensional table sets forth for each lot.
And within, oh, Cheryl, go, I'm sorry.
No, so I'm trying to come up with, we're talking probably about a 5,000 square foot house then on a 20,000 square foot lot. If that's 75%, just taking that, right? 75% of open space.
well, I think that would be on one level, right? So we would actually do the houses smaller, but probably be 2-level homes. Right, so your lot coverage would most likely be around 3,000 or 2,500 of house, and then that would be on 2 levels. So the plan for these homes would be in compliant, which in this zone, if Mark can speak on it, but it's 6,000 square feet, and that's including your garage.
Because you're going to have a lot of issue with ledge up there. So how are you going to manage basements and all of that sort of thing? I guess you're not going to be building into the hill as much as you're going to be setting your piles on rock, right?
Yeah, it's, we met with our architect up there. He actually did a lot of the homes that were down on the lower part of this development over the past few years, and it's very, he was like, it's almost like a jigsaw puzzle of how to lay the house out properly with walkout basements based on where the ledge is located, so that you minimize blasting, and you're able to lay the houses out and still get some type of basement where if you're able to use the drop down in the rear, you can then have a walkout basement. So our goal would be to have basements, but if there's an area where once we start doing our borings and testing, we can't do a basement, that's something that could occur. But our goal would be to have basements.
Yeah, I would imagine that these are really challenging sites for even yards and 75% open space. So a walkout basement onto what, right? I mean, it's kind of, you have your diagram, I'm just gonna call it that because I don't really consider what's drawn at this point to be legible for me, in terms of, I'm looking at the scale of the cul-de-sac, the lollipop. It's enormous compared to, say, the footprint of a house. Or is that being developed based on the turnaround for a fire truck? How did you come up with something that big?
Yeah, so that it is large, right? And that it could be taken to a smaller scale. We really wanted to show it that it could be at the size for a fire truck to make a full turn. I think we'd end up at a smaller cul-de-sac when we get into full engineering of the street. But right now this is very conceptual, so we're kind of just showing a large cul-de-sac at that point. But if we came back to you, I'd have much more specifics on that exact width, and work with the fire department to ensure it properly works for a turnaround.
Sure. I think one of the concerns that I have is that based on the topography and the way that you're going to have to build on these sites, all of the level property is, it looks like it's both cul-de-sac blacktop and then driveway and probably grass, in order to make an approach to a house that's somewhere in the realm of 5,000 to 7,000 square feet, right? Which is someone buying into Winchester at that size they're expecting a pretty grand piece of property. So your views are great. I'm sure that'll attract a lot of people, but I just don't I just don't feel as though, I think the cul-de-sac is really creating a void as opposed to a shared community space, which is what I think is, a positive about cul-de-sacs, right? Sure, yeah,
Cheryl, I just want to say
I'm up.
the
Yeah,
time is moving on, so I'd like to,
please do.
if, let's see, Sally, I think you had wanted say something, and I apologize for not keeping better time. So Sally, if you could give us 3 minutes, and then I Ching, if you wanted to say something, why don't we do it in that order?
So I'm really happy that Beth is here because I know that a lot of work was just done to accommodate significant water coming into New Tile Field, if that's how you say the name. And my question would be, I did investigate whether this property drains into a big winter pond, and apparently it does not, which is really a good thing. But in fact, it does drain towards the ball field that I guess the town just spent a ton of money putting new storm water retention underground technology into. And my question for Beth is, that system, that installation was sized not counting this additional hardscape above it. Is that such that it would require that whole investment to be redone?
So the applicant would be required to match pre and post runoff rates and volumes for this development. That's obviously one of my biggest concerns with the ledge up there. I would expect it to be very challenging to match the volume piece. So I would be interested to see once they proceed further with their design, how that is achieved. And I just wanted to make one note to follow up on what Cheryl was talking about in terms of the size of the cul-de-sac. So because the town subdivision regulations do not allow cul-de-sacs as of right, we have no design guidelines for the size or dimension of cul-de-sacs, which I do think is an issue in cases where the board may choose to grant a waiver. We have nothing in terms of regulations to fall back on. So if the board does decide to move forward with a waiver, we'll have to make some decisions about kind of what the maximum dimensions of a cul-de-sac would be. Thank you.
Yeah, I can just quickly say on the drainage, that's would be our, the number one priority up here. After it is the drainage. We understand that that's a concern. It was the first thing we met with our engineers about, is how we can do that and, improve the water running off the site with Coltech systems and different catch basins on each parcel. And my engineering team was confident that they'd be able to do that, and it would improve the water running off the ledge, because we'd be able to actually maintain it on our sites and then slowly release it. And instead of having it rushing down the rock, we'd actually be able to catch it into the systems and slowly release it. I know obviously we work closely with engineering, and that would be our requirement, would be to match or exceed what's currently happening. And my goal would be to improve what's happening down on the ball fields.
And if I could just add too, I think that is one of the benefits too that is derived from not continuing the road all the way down to Socrates, by not having to provide all that extra pavement that may not be necessary. And to your point, to the planning board member, Wolf, and what Beth just said, yeah, certainly the width and the radius of the cul-de-sac are not something that, I think the less pavement we could do, the better, to be honest with you. So we're not wedded to any specific design as it comes to that.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah, can I ask other comments?
Yeah, sure. Just one question. We'll get to I Ching. Sure.
Oh no, I Ching, if you want to go in, I'll save my questions for after.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, welcome to town, Mr. Bellavo. I'm glad you're here and taking on such a challenging site and a humongous amount of investment in tackling this very, very precarious site. And I know, So we're happy to hear. Hope you have a really, really productive and happy time with your family. And I think the history or the sort of the challenges that we're facing here, I think, is the history of the zoning in this part of town, which is, you know, really, really giant lots. 20,000 square feet is quite a lot versus 7,500 in other parts of town. 100, feet of frontage, huge, right? So it's one of the least dense parts of town, and yet are one of the biggest challenges for our town, as well as the greater Boston area, is just the lack of housing and number of units and how many people need housing. And so, you know, I understand the character of the neighborhood. Yes, it is one of the more expensive, bigger lots parts of town, but it's also in the neighborhood of the Ledges, which is condoized, you know, a lot of units in one. And because we have such a shortage of space in town, I'm really reluctant to see this kind of development. And you know, the minimum lot size is 20,000, and yet there's 25,000. There's some 27,000, and you know, I just think that there's a humongous imbalance of the 5,000 square foot houses in the $2 million ranges, whereas there's so little that many others cannot claim a space in, or to even just scale down from some of the houses here in town. So I just think that for the amount of work that you're going to be putting into this development, and it's going to be a lot of disruption no matter what. You know, I would love to see it economy of means, get the lot sizes to small as possible, and get as many units as possible in there. If not, get waiverances to not do single. I think that we just cannot use such precious land to continue to do that. So I would hope that you guys would consider some other ways of bringing more density. It's a cul-de-sac, so it's gonna be its own little island of, you know, community, and we are seeking just a more diverse housing stock in town. And I understand the neighbors might want to see single family, but the town, the region needs more. It needs way more than giant houses. Right? So
Yeah, no, and I really appreciate that, and I know that it's something that's important to the town. You know, now that I am in town, I think there's going to be opportunities for us to do other projects. We have projects going on all over the state. You know, I think we could definitely do and improve the housing stock in town. I don't know if this site is the right site for it, but I'm excited about the opportunity, and I hope to work more with the board and the town to find sites that work well to help with a diversity of housing stock. When I saw this site, that's not where my developer brain went. But I mean, it's great feedback, and it's something we can definitely take away for sure and talk to the team about.
thank you.
Sally, thank you, I Ching. Sally, did you want to come back with your question?
Yes. First of all, I want to totally second what Cheryl and I Ching said about both the size of the cul-de-sac and also what Beth said about needing to put in place standards for cul-de-sac exceptions or waivers, and then heartily endorse I Ching's observation that notwithstanding what the as of right development of this land offers, this town really needs housing that is not large houses on large lots available to people who can buy $2 million homes. It is not what the Winchester master plan, and it is not what this community needs. And I Ching is exactly right that there are very few places left in town where we can begin to address some of our long-term housing goals for this town. And to take this difficult and exquisite site and not work with it to meet more than just the objectives of building 6 more $2 million homes in town seems to be a disservice. And the fact that a cul-de-sac is not permitted as of right um, is partly because of some contemporary urban planning concepts that have to do with connectivity of communities, and also cul-de-sacs are known to add traffic to the remaining connecting streets. And therefore, if you create connecting streets, you diffuse those additional cars into the neighborhoods and you create more community. So I'm not in favor of this property being a cul-de-sac, and I would not even consider such a waiver without understanding um, at the next level of engineering analysis what the obstacles are to connecting to Socrates. And with regards to the landscaping that the neighbors benefit from that's on the Mahoney's property, certainly it can be a requirement that of the developer that the landscaping at the end of the connecting road onto Socrates be something that serves the needs of those homeowners. With regards to the difficulty of the site, what I see from the sort of paper cutout concept plan that you put down onto this property is that you would probably need 30-foot retaining walls extending over most of the, let's see, the map is upside down now. Let me just in my mind do it. It would be most of the southeast side and the northwest side of the development would need retaining walls that would be almost continuous and would in some places be as high as 30 feet. Um, and I hear what Attorney Vaughn has said, that in fact, the engineering to do the connection to Socrates would require blasting and even more engineering. Um, I would need to see at least uh, a design development concept on what the engineering of that road would be. And I would also be very much in favor of being able to have this land, and it would require a waiver from the planning board and the zoning board of appeals, but to do other than single family zoning. I think about, you know, Killington, Vermont. It's possible to put um, cluster homes, beautiful townhomes, in this gorgeous upland site and have the benefit of that property be available to many more residents in Winchester. And it would create an even more um, cohesive sense of community. It can be done beautifully. It has to be done sensitively. Um, I don't favor this very large home, single family scenario with a cul-de-sac. I just don't.
Um, okay, thank you, Sally. Um, everyone has pretty much stole my thunder. This is indeed an incredibly challenging site. I am concerned that you are actually going to create an Erie's nest, which is probably the least connected site in town. Sally's concerns about the retaining walls, I think, is really important. We do like to minimize retaining walls, and I don't know. I noticed there are a number of existing retaining walls on the site. I'm not sure. There's probably some interesting history as to why there are so many retaining walls around the site, which apparently has never had houses built on there, but there must have been some concerns previously. It really, I think, comes down to what is in the best interests of the town. And I don't know that we have yet come to an understanding of what giving a waiver on this site does to benefit the town. It certainly will benefit the owners of this property because they will have a really nice piece of land with great views. But
Yeah, I mean,
providing a waiver is essentially saying that we see a greater benefit. And I think that the developers still need to prove a greater benefit in order for us to give them to give a waiver. One of the things that I do want to do is to have a discussion with town council as to what are the boundaries for waivers, what are the reasons we can give them, what are the considerations we can request if we do give a waiver. I think this board, and certainly me, I don't have enough experience with how this is done. So asking town council to come in and give us some advice as to what is possible in terms of it. But I share a lot of the misgivings that you've heard. We do need less expensive housing in town. It is entirely possible that we could do a friendly 40B, put in cluster housing, get more units in there. There might be an issue with safety egress if the number of units goes up beyond a certain amount. I don't know what that number is. So there's certainly some engineering challenges depending upon if we go that route. But I think we still need to keep an open mind as to what could go on this property. And so I thank you for, I mean, I think this really is the start of a discussion. I hope you folks have gotten some idea of what the board's concerns are.
Yeah, if I could just maybe say something to help conclude the discussion. I really appreciate all the board members taking the time to comment on it. And I hear you. I'm a resident of the town as well, and fully aware of the desire and the need for diversification of housing stock and whatnot. I think the question really becomes: is this the right location? And I know that sounds like, oh, everyone can say it's not the right location for every other site in town, but I mean, I think and I'm not saying I have the answer yes or no, but I think that's one of the questions as to whether this site is the correct location for that type of more dense development. And I think the board acknowledges that we're kind of caught in a hard place here, that the zoning only allows single family residential with 20,000 square foot lot minimum. So we're not inventing that issue. That's what exists as a requirement on here. And I guess the only other thing I would, want to leave you with in terms of the benefit of the waiver and what benefit, one of the principles of the subdivision rules and regs is, to the maximum extent practical, feasible, development should be located to preserve the natural features, environmental resources of the site, avoid areas of sensitivity, minimize negative impacts that alter or degrade natural features, minimize volume of cut and fill, including blasting. So those are provisions in your subdivision rules that, we feel actually that by virtue of the waiver, you satisfy more than if we had to, bring that road through. But with that, Ricky, I don't know if you have anything you wanted to add to that, but it sounds like we're going to continue the discussion after tonight. So
yeah, no, I appreciate everybody's feedback. It's kind of everyone gave us a lot of great info on the site. I think it really is one of a kind, and I think if we can find something that works here, we'd be really excited to do it. So we'll go back to the drawing board, and we'll continue to look at it, and we'll come back to you guys.
Okay, thank you. I think we're open to that. You've certainly heard some concerns. Maybe you could help address them. And I suggest you rename Rocky Ledge Terrace to Poison Ivy Terrace. I went out there and I was going to take a short walk on the land. I had sandals on. And I said, not today.
No, don't walk through there with sandals.
Okay, thank you very much, and we will certainly have continued this discussion. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks.
Okie dokie, folks. Why don't I go back to sharing our screen so I can remember where we are in terms of our schedule, our agenda, I should say. Okay. So as we noted earlier, and hold on a second. Is somebody actually? No, that's interesting. Has someone been letting people in? Because there are a lot of people who are suddenly here who should have been in the waiting room, but welcome anyway. I know I recognize a number of people's names, and I'm sure you're here because Abbey Road is on our agenda.
Yeah, but I think they're still in the waiting room. I don't see other attendees.
I see Cynthia and Mike McHale. I
No.
see Ann Sarah. I think
Oh.
they are, I see them in the actual room.
Yeah.
So somehow they were let in. Welcome. The Abbey Road item on our agenda has been postponed. There are both parties, the lawyers are still working on relevant details of the tripartite agreement, and they were not yet ready to present this evening. So the Abbey Road will be rescheduled for another day. So if you're here for that, thank you for attending, but unfortunately we have no further news for you. So we will be continuing on to our 8:45 section on the Master Plan Implementation Committee. And let me go back to sharing my screen. Okay, you can see my messy screen. We are right here, Master Plan Implementation Committee continued. And somewhere around here. Nope, that's not it. Let's find
So
it.
Diab, you know a messy desk is a sign of great genius.
No, a messy desk is a sign of having a very small screen and too many things on here. Believe me, I've seen a lot of I've seen a lot of messy desks of people who are geniuses, and that's me as one of them. Okay, so here we are. So I wanted to give you all. So we have an if I can do my math here, we have approximately 30 minutes for Master Plan Implementation Committee. So let me very quickly go through. I had I was approached by the chair of the select board, Susan Radicchio, to continue a discussion we had a couple of weeks ago about the Master Plan Implementation Committee. And so let me just give you some of her concerns so that you understand, for a person outside looking in. So one of her concerns was the size of the board, that 9 members was perhaps too unwieldy. 7 might be better just in terms of getting things done. One of the issues I had was trying to explain exactly what it was that this committee would do. Certainly we know it's supposed to help implement the master plan, but how will it do so? What sort of advocacy would it have? I mean, how would it relate to other town boards? Those are kind of fuzzy things, which makes it kind of difficult to approach a board and say, hey, we would like your buy-in to this concept of the master plan. We want you to help us select the committee and be part of this process. But then we have to say, here's the process. What is it this committee will do? Mm-hmm. Are they going to be a research arm? Are they going to be, how are they going to, the select board has certain priorities. Let's say the select board wants to have its first priority being housing production or pedestrian safety. And, how does that work in with this committee, which is supposed to be looking at a broader range of issues? How does it fit in policies and priorities? How does it interact with everyone in order to make sure that this whole thing is a coherent approach to solving the problem? So that's kind of what I got out of our discussion today. And one of the things that we did decide was that the planning board, probably just Brian and I, because it won't be a joint meeting, would give the select board, and this might be a useful exercise for the other boards, is to give them a short primer on what the master plan is, how it affects them, mm-hmm. and what the master plan implementation committee can do for them. I think there's a real question that people are asking is, what do we get out of this committee? And how does it help our job become better? Or how does it help us focus better? So I think those are things that we need to think about when we get down to talking about, once we get past like who's on the board or the terms of the selection committee, more of what is the mission? How does it work? Things like that. So with that, I'm going to step back and maybe we can start talking about some of these to make this stuff a little less fuzzy. And I hope I didn't scare you all into
No, Diab, I can give you a synopsis of a conversation. I had the privilege of attending the Traffic and Transportation Advisory Committee last night, which took place in Town Hall. So that was kind of a refreshing change. And the master plan came up, and I can share with you sort of the gist of that conversation, but let me defer to Cheryl and I Ching before I do that.
I don't have anything to specifically address at this point, so it'd be better that we had a conversation.
Okay.
One of the things that I was concerned about with the committee was just the lack of power it seemed to have. I just didn't seem to see, to your point, Dia, about how it works or how it's going to accomplish anything. Besides the fact of, maybe 7 like-minded people coming together to talk about how the town can be, but would they have voting rights, say in select board or some kind of a thing, or to be able to actually have some say and a sway in anything. And when we were talking about how it reports back to us, like it seemed a very like a subservient level of power. Like then what are they there for but to sort of do our bidding in some ways, right? Like I just didn't see a way for them to have any say, really.
Okay, that's a good point. I mean, I think that gets back to a question of what level of government is this committee at. So, for instance, we could one thing that Susan Verdicchio she mentioned is that we could look at how other towns have formed their committees and may perhaps learn from their successes. The other thing we could do is, for instance, we could look at, say, capital planning. And that reminds me, Cheryl, I was going to ask you to give a report on capital planning during updates, but I completely forgot. So maybe we can do that later. But capital planning is also it's a well-respected board, which does it does have they get to decide which projects come up before town meeting, but there is the town meeting still has to decide on them, and it goes into the budget, but there is a respect that is given to that because of it's seen as at a higher level. It's not simply, well, it is an advisory committee, it's one that has power through respect, I guess. It may have some fiducial powers that I don't know about because I don't know enough about how they get their power from the state, if they do or not. But
it'd be interesting for the committee to be able to bring certain voting issues to town.
yeah, I mean,
honestly, I think you make a really you make a very good point, and I would say that a master plan is a tool, right, for all of us to understand the kind of change that the town would like to support. And so if we have developers who come in, for instance, like Ricky, and we have others in more, in sort of a hotbed of downtown trying to make, make things work with the zoning. And then I think the master plan committee from all its different directions, historical, capital planning. I don't see them on here. I see housing partnership. That makes enormous amount of sense. I think the idea is that it's always, what do we have in the master plan that supports these projects or does not support them, right? Because I'm still sort of coming off of the taste in my mouth of having Waterfield fall apart the way it did. And I think that, Waterfield supports master planning. It's forward thinking. And so I believe that this, as long as this committee is very educated on the master plan and can speak to it when there are votes and things taking place that need the master plan can support, then I think it's then the master plan is a tool.
Diab, can I jump
Yeah,
in?
yeah, just go ahead.
So I totally agree with Cheryl, and that the master plan is a guiding tool, and that it occurs to me that the role of this committee, certainly you mentioned research, and you mentioned how to having a discussion about setting priorities. It is an advisory committee to, the way I'm picturing it, the chairs of the other committees in town as they make their priorities known to the capital planning and other budget processes. And that's the thing that was sort of revealed to me or made obvious to me sitting in on the Traffic and Transportation Advisory Committee meeting last night. Beth Rudolph made a great presentation about the 11 projects that she is presenting, or she actually has put in front of the Capital Planning Committee, some bridge projects, some transportation projects, flood mitigation project, and in the transportation projects, the Traffic and Transportation Committee asked if she could explain how she ranked the priority, because she understands that you don't get everything you ask for, you have to prioritize. And so then they had a great conversation about how you prioritize things. And I don't need to go into that, but it does say to me that every single committee who's mentioned in the master plan action plan book under the 64 specific strategy recommendations that you can count are a finite number of activities. And you might remember that I counted how many times different committees were mentioned as responsible parties in each of those 64. I don't have that document at hand. But the Master Plan Implementation Committee is basically advising every one of those boards through their chair or through a delegate of theirs on how to prioritize. And it's not telling them how, but it's coming up with their advice on how to prioritize. Because the master plan is the guide, as Cheryl Wolf said, to our map to a better future for this town. We all agreed on that map. So I hear what Select Member Verdicchio is saying about having too many members. I think that we need to make a very clear mission and vision, and define their who they're answering to. I mean, frankly, I think they might answer to town meeting, because town meeting as a representative form of government represents the people who made the master plan. And certainly they're making an advice to the budget process, finance committee, and the capital planning committee. So to me, it's an advisory committee that is serving the needs of the boards of the town, boards, councils, commissions, and committees of town who are mentioned in the master plan, to advise them on perhaps having a consistent set of principles guiding their prioritizing, okay? And then helping them create their priorities, and then helping them strategize or advocate for, or no, not advocate. Each board in town advocates for their own budget needs and priorities. The Master Plan Advisory Committee, I think, I'm sorry, I'm being really hard to say this, advises them in a way that is a holistic view, so that all the priorities across all the different committees that are charged with implementing the master plan are sort of settled on with a consonant set of principles. And that's the role of the advisory master plan. And I'm actually calling it, in my mind, it's a master plan implementation advisory committee, because they're simply advising the other boards and departments on how they shall go through the budget process.
Ellie, again, that feels like very powerless to me.
Well, all advisory boards in town are essentially powerless. It's really interesting to me. I didn't understand that the first time I was in town meeting, which was for like 6 years, and then there was
Cheryl, you seem like you really need to, you have something to say.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Sally, I did my little hand.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was so lost. I really apologize for not.
No, I know you were in that flow moment, and I didn't want to.
I'm sorry.
I was trying to use a visual. No, I think all of the things that you were saying really seem to center in on prioritization, and what I wanted to kind of what it drew my eye to is that the mission here looks just like the duties list, and they're very, for me, when you write a mission versus what you're going to do, it's should be very, the mission needs to be a little more, potentially not esoteric, but more
overarching.
Yeah, and then, but the duties here, these 3 duties, they make complete sense to me, because they talk about delivery of interacting and coming away with information for both the planning board and for the town, and information in a way that could be gathered and disseminated through metrics, all of that. I think these were written really well. I think maybe the mission might have given the select board a little pause, because it seems like they
Oh, I don't think the select board saw this mission.
oh, okay, all right.
This is me. You can blame the mission statement on me. It is more duties than mission. I completely agree.
And I just love what you said.
I think what I Ching is saying in terms of there being.
Oh, Cheryl, it's I Ching. I know you call me Katie usually.
I'm sorry, Katie I Ching. Sorry. Is I apologize, but
no,
it's terrible. But I think the power is in what you do, and I think that the duties that you've listed here are those are golden with me. I mean, those seem to be very powerful moments in the year of a committee, having contact with so many different groups.
I think that's exactly spot on, Cheryl. And so to loop back to your first point, which was that the mission should derive from the vision. And the vision is that we agreed as a community that we would do these things. In fact, I found, I don't have, oh, maybe I do. I found in my notes from a February 2019 master planning meeting that Jen Goldson was doing. It was a list of what would Winchester look like. And it was reporting on the consensus of the conversations at that stage. And that vision, that townwide vision of what Winchester is and will be, and it's sort of like that's the guiding principles thing that I was trying to talk about, that would be consistent across every committee, council, commission, and board in town, that is pegged with the responsibility to execute one of the 64 recommended strategies. And so the mission is to just make sure that everybody stays true to the vision of the master plan. And so it's like the liaise with boards, that's duties. Recommend actions. Well, we can recommend, yeah, and form subcommittees to research and provide, sure. But the prioritizing of goals is actually done at the level of the councils and commissions and boards and committees that are assigned to achieve each of those 64 things. And the mission of this committee is just to make sure that they're all staying true to.
Okay, so I don't know if this would be a useful exercise or if it's fruitless, but what if we had MPIC, 3 months ago, like what would its role have been in trying to work on Waterfield?
That's an
We're all
excellent
agreeing
question.
that Waterfield was really in line with the master plan. What would this committee have done that would have changed anything?
Well, so having that group, many people, let's say it was that group right there. I'm just saying as an example, that we would have been at town meeting last fall where we voted in favor of the Waterfield development as proposed by Civico, and we authorized the select board to move forward with discussions, that this group would have reported to town meeting on how this particular project supports these specific goals of our master plan. And that educational conversation apparently never took place because so many people in town didn't understand how much it was aligned with the town's our whole community's vision for the future.
Well, so I want to jump in just a sec here, if only because we have 10 minutes left. I don't know. So what, why Waterfield did not go through the referendum didn't go the way we'd hoped. I don't know how much this committee, if we'd had it 3 months ago, it's there to advise the town government. If the town government doesn't have its act together in order to essentially tell the populace what's going on, maybe that's one of the things that the advisory committee can do, is say, you people are not speaking with a unified voice.
Mm-hmm.
You're not reaching out. You are not, for instance, the select board is not talking to X board or Y board and asking them for their help in pushing this forward. Sally, one of the things, I agree, if this advisory board had shown up at town meeting, it would have been very powerful, but we know town meeting voted to pass this thing, right? So would that have been, I'm just looking at, we need to convince everyone not at town meeting.
Good, yes. And so perhaps I do believe that one of those 64 recommendations has to do with communicating with our citizenry.
Yes.
And so certainly that could be something that the Master Plan Implementation Committee might identify as one of the without which nothings, the sine qua nons of moving forward with our master plan is communications. Because and I think that that's a reasonable conclusion to draw based on the fact that the referendum succeeded in overturning an educated vote of the town in favor of a vote that did not observe all the facts. And that's an opinion statement. I'll acknowledge that, but I don't believe that the people who voted no were fully educated on how consonant with statewide and townwide goals the development at Waterfield is. And so one of the roles of this committee can be to prioritize education and communications.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it goes along with, and I think Sally, you said it really well in terms of getting the boards and the committees in town to go to a consistent set of principles. So, for instance, had the select board been working with the other boards, I know there's some things they can't do because they have to do, um, negotiations on property and such. That's in their bailiwick. But I think there may have been a level of coordination across town which might have been improved. So I think that, and I wrote down a word here, which is that this board serves as the conscience of the town in terms of always reminding it where it's, the master plan serves as our map to achieve this vision, and we need to be constantly reminded how to do that or where to do that. I want to, as we are kind of winding down, I think that one of the things we may have come to a decision on is that this committee be actually, going back to the beginning of this document, which I just threw up there, is a standing committee of the town meeting. And in the sense that that actually gives it a broader authority because it derives from the will of town meeting, and it is not necessarily seen as a pawn of any one committee. And so that may be able to broker things between committees. I'm really worried about silos and how we are creating silos in town. And maybe this is one way of breaking through those silos. And maybe we can agree that this should be a standing committee of Winchester Town Meeting.
What does that mean legally, Diab? I'm sorry to interrupt. I just want to know what the word standing means.
The town meeting will create this committee and it will report to town meeting. It will be a committee which exists as long as town meeting wants it to exist. And presumably it will exist forever, I hope.
Well, is there any other board like that? Is there another committee like that?
There are other committees that have been formed. Like there's a field committee which was formed to look at how to manage fields.
And that was created by town meeting?
That was created by town meeting.
Great. So it must be in our town bylaws.
Yeah, I think that the town meeting can create any sort of committees. There was a committee that was created to when the town was looking at Right Lock Farm.
Right.
They created a committee to examine, I've already forgotten what they did, but that was created back then. Eventually, that was a committee with a limited lifetime, I believe.
Well, this one would be at least through 2030, or if not 2033, just so we can look back of, a couple of budget cycles and say, this is what we achieved.
I think that we would want this to be when I say standing, I mean one that does not have an end date. It has no shelf life. Great. And that way town meeting would have some buy-in into it, and it would actually, I think, again, provide some buffer from the politics in town, and also give it maybe a little more power than if it didn't have it. I'm really sensitive, I Ching, to your concern about power, and I don't know that we can't give it any extra power.
Well, the power that it has is like, say that, just because I went to this one meeting, okay, traffic and transportation, say they come with a set of priorities, say they, Beth has this list of all the things that she wanted to get done in the next fiscal cycle. And she knows that some of them are going to get cut off, so she prioritized them. Say the Traffic and Transportation Advisory Committee recommended that different departments of the town put different projects and different priorities, and the authority that this advisory committee to the different committees and boards of town would be to say that we would like to comment on your priorities and say that this committee agrees with your priorities with the exception of number 4, right? Yeah. I'm making that up. That would be made known to town meeting, and town meeting votes on the budget.
So that would be very much like what we did just a couple town meetings ago, where we wrote into the zoning bylaws that all things had to go through, for instance, design review, disability access, that things went through and we got opinions from all these people. And when I say we, I mean town government. So for instance, the ZBA would get opinions from all of these different committees. And so there would be a official request for comment from this committee. So we could, so that would give it some power, because everyone would all of a sudden expect that, hey, where's our memo from the MPIC?
Right. And frankly, those memos, I think you're right that uh, when the moderator at town meeting asks, the Conservation Commission how they feel, or any of the Disability Access Commission, Traffic and Transportation, all of these fabulous advisory committees, the town moderator calls on them as part of the town meeting process of deliberating the allocation of funds for this project, at least in the budget cycle, and that what this committee has to say has weight in the vote of town meeting. Just like I always think, well, what did finance say? What did capital planning recommend, right? I mean, and I think it's interesting that one of the reasons that the no vote won is because of the divided vote of the finance committee. So there's an example of where a recommendation at town meeting, because it wasn't a clear recommendation, it was a divided recommendation, that it was an opportunity for more discussion, frankly. And that this committee would be yet another voice, a unified voice focused on the long range and the priorities that we set up as a town. And yes, they would have authority, because they would have the authority that the capital planning has of advising and recommending on really big stuff that has a big impact. And that is a platform.
Can I ask a question?
Of course, yeah.
All right. So in terms of the master plan being implemented, it was created because it was agreed that this was the direction that the town wanted to take, right? Or the planners who devised it. But as the planning committee, I mean, as the planning board, we are the ones who are, using the laws and moving things forward. I think that's where the power is, Katie. I don't think trying to create another power center when the planning board created the master plan and the town planner is behind the master plan, I kind of see this implementation committee as just like the marketing committee. I mean, they're the guys that get out there and really understand what this thing is and make sure that it's heard. I mean, because all the things that we have to go through at every meeting, addressing different citizens who have concerns, or developers who want to do certain things, we're still all having to use the laws and the bylaws of the town in order to get anything done anyway.
Right.
So, I mean, maybe I'm getting a little confused.
No, that's so interesting, because I think that's where it started. I think that the evolution of this MPIC idea was that would be where, it started. And then we started to get it into, well, who's going to have a say into this committee and what will this committee do? And
right.
Then, also, Dia, I think at your last meeting, you were saying that, we don't want to be seen as sort of like seeking power, like more power through this MPIC. Right. The planning board doesn't want to be seen as, taking on more.
But if certain committees who can see the vision clearly of the master plan can be part of this implementation group, then I think that they'll it will be a lens by which a lot of the things that the town has to decide on, vote on, or look at in terms of its future, it will be seen through the master plan.
Yes, that's a
Through-
great
through
word,
the-
lens. Great word is lens.
So I'm actually getting a little confused here because
We're all holding hands on this one.
yeah. So
No, I thought that there was great clarity coming from what Cheryl just said, because it reinforces the notion that as a standing committee of town meeting, it's an advisory committee. And one of the very first things they could do is sit down and agree on the guiding principles by which they will evaluate all the different master plan implementation projects coming out of the different committees.
Is
Well,
that what
wait-
you meant, Cheryl?
wait, I don't think.
No, I don't think so. I think Sally, I think I think
Yeah,
the lens word might have been a little tough, but because I think if the master plan is well thought out, and there's holes in every kind of design and document, but it should have already the principles of what.
So it's endowed with its own authority.
But
would
it's
think
not
so.
endowed with any authority because the master plan is just a piece of paper which we are required to put out, but no one has to do anything with.
Well, and that's what I think, what Cheryl said about it being a marketing committee, it's a booster, it's the cheering squad. It's the one that says that I hope everybody who has a role in town committees mentioned that can achieve these 64 goals by 2030 is keeping in mind, because we went across all these committees and agreed these are the principles, and it's probably written right in the master plan, frankly.
But,
Wait,
but
Cheryl, Cheryl, what do you mean? Can I hear from you? I mean, so,
Sorry.
no, it's okay.
I just don't think you take the master plan and then say, okay, do this. I'm thinking that there are things that we do and all these committees do, especially the planning board, if we're making decisions or trying to help the town make decisions about sites like Waterfield. The master plan should support. If Waterfield is following the master plan, then the master plans should step up and market for Waterfield. Does that make
Right.
sense?
I totally agree
The
with that.
master plan or the master plan committee?
Well,
Well,
the master plan, the implementation committee
Committee should
is
step
one
up.
that just allows, would stand up at a meeting and be able to say, this is how, what we're looking at today and trying to decide about, or if we look at it in terms of the master plan, it's this, and this. It's within the master plan that the direction of this decision,
Right.
it serves the master plan like this. I'm starting to get a little bit, sorry.
No, but you're exactly right.
But it's a little bit redundant in that you're saying the planning board is already supposed to be the master plan implementation committee, right? I mean, because we are the ones thinking about the laws and about the future, whatever it is, right? Is that
Right, but do we bring master plan principles and do we bring that as a tool to the historic committee, for instance, or is that what it was meant by this initial implementation? Because I really did like if you go down on here, that if you get to town meeting and the historic commission is putting forward something in town meeting, that if the master plan is to succeed, it needs to be a part of, I would think it should be a part of what changes the town wants to make through town meeting, whether it's in the historic commission or.
But there's a host of other things that happen in town government outside of town meeting.
And that's very true. And so the Master Plan Implementation Committee has a role in town meeting, and then they also have a role in basically just being a marketing and booster person. So say, for instance, one of the big things in the master plan is that we really need to have a person and a board focused on economic development strategies. Okay, economic development. Okay, that's a thing that the master plan recommended that we beef up our conversations and our strategies about. Okay, planning board doesn't necessarily have the sole purview of economic development, right? So it's not a planning board thing. It's the implementation committee looking at all the boards that were mentioned by Jen Goldson as this is the committee that will take this one on, or group.
I'm sorry, but we're now 7 minutes over, and we do have to talk about town or our fall town meeting. I think that I hate to leave us in the middle of this discussion because I'm still uncertain how, Cheryl, your comments don't already fit into. I don't understand how they aren't already in. Everything seems to be moving in the same direction, but I get a sense that you think that it isn't. And maybe,
No, I'm just saying that I was addressing your comment about the select board really not jiving with this, right?
oh, I think the select board doesn't know what the mission is. I think part of the problem is nobody knows what this committee is supposed to do. So,
Right.
but I think we have what I think we're moving forward. I think I don't want to sum up what we've just said because I will do it wrong. But I think this is a really good discussion and we have to continue it. But unfortunately, and I hate to break you off in the middle, Sally, but we do have a whole discussion about fall town meeting articles that is coming up right now as part of our scheduling.
Right.
And so I think we do need to move into that to start the conversation about that.
Good.
And so I am going to.
Can I just make one suggestion about the mission statement, Diab?
While I'm looking for this, sure, I have to find the stupid document. Go ahead.
Okay, and I'm sure it's not stupid. I'm sure it's brilliant, but
Everybody.
It's your document, so I take them all back. I'm just talking about my computer.
I know.
no-
One way to move the conversation forward between planning board meetings would be for two people of the planning board to take a stab at a mission statement, because then it's not, it's a subcommittee.
Yeah, and if a couple of people want to do that, who feels most strongly about that? I think we do need a mission statement.
Well, I would be very happy to partner with any of you because everybody on this board has really clear insights about this.
I don't think they're clear at all, but I'll send you an email with what I've written down while we're talking if you want. But I don't have more bandwidth to do more.
No, I understand. Well, I'm happy to take a stab at it, but I also really value not working in a vacuum, having a thought partner. But totally up to you guys.
Okay, well, why don't we do this? Why don't we I don't know how to go. If we don't have a subcommittee, I do not have the time in the next couple of weeks to do that because I'm out of town and my schedule's really tight. So
can I be a committee of one and create a draft?
Anyone can be a committee of one. You can call yourself to order and
call myself an institute.
Yes. So let us let us move on to
okay.
Why don't we start talking about, so first of all, there is this wonderful document that Brian dug out of the past, which hopefully you've all seen, which is sort of how we look at planning board process for town meeting. And we are sort of in this. And we're sort of we're still in the May to start of September where we're actually we're trying to design our text. Usually August is pretty much nothing really much happens in terms of things. And then everything starts after Labor Day. We start having to set up, we will get some petitions in that we review. And then we will provide our text to legal. They will take several weeks usually because they have to go through a whole bunch of town meeting articles. We will have a public hearing. That's what the Chapter 40A is at the end of September. Then we will revise. That's when people can come in and tell us what they think of us. Then we revise it. And then it has to go into the printers essentially mid-October. So that's our schedule.
That's so helpful. I did not have this document, and I had actually asked who for it, but this is exactly what we need, because this allows us to know what we can pull off.
Yeah, so essentially, beginning of August, we need to have our text pretty much done because everyone goes on vacation and all sorts of other things happen. So let us now move on to, and so we had a little subcommittee. Let's see, it was I Ching and Sally. You met with Brian, I believe. And why don't I turn it over to either one of you who wants to lead this discussion, and you let me know which. We have two documents that Brian put in the packet for us tonight. One was a comparison of bylaws from a number of towns, and the other was, I believe this was a matrix looking
That was
at.
this is the table of contents chart.
Okay, so
It just says which topic I was able to cut and paste from different town laws.
okay,
Different
so
towns bylaws.
So what we have about half an hour, I believe, if I look at our agenda. And so why don't one of you want to start? Give us a framework for our discussion tonight. Oh, we still have to talk about design consultant. We do not have half an hour. Why don't we talk about design consultant? So let's give this 20 minutes and we'll go from there. Okay, so we have until it's 9:30, 9:50 to beginning this discussion. Okay.
I Ching, I want to turn it over to you, but I just want to explain my rationale for the document that I sent to you and Brian that ended up in his packet, which was that we had a conversation last week about, or you and Brian and I had a conversation about, if you go to that little chart that I made, Diab, that all we need to do is come up with, if you look at the bottom left corner, where is it? Half story, comma half. Okay, it's the fourth one from the bottom. That we just need to make sure that we come up with a better definition. Okay, and what I noticed when I was starting this exercise, I was going to give I Ching and Brian just what do other towns do, is that all these other things that are on the left get, in one way or another, involved in the definition of story and a half, or half, excuse me, half story. Okay, so then Brian and I Ching and I had a really good discussion about which aspects of half story are problematic. And so what I did with this document, and again, I told I Ching, sorry, it's like a fire hose, but even if we were just to skip across the towns, I'm looking at the check marks next to half story. What does Arlington, Belmont, Bedford, Belmont, Lexington, Lincoln, there's a lot of them say about this. And if you want, we could do that the next meeting, and then from that decide what we want to say, or we can just, each thing you can go and talk about what you took away from the Brian and meeting and the drawings that you were thinking about doing.
All right, so I didn't have time to do the drawings, but Sally did an amazing amount of work. This is like what I imagined we would be looking at, and she collected it all in no time at all. It's amazing, Sally. I'm sure it took a lot of time. But
Well,
it's
no, it was
fantastic
kind of, it
effort.
was mostly, it was just deep dives. I did like
It's
3 deep
great.
dives and it was
Great
done.
understanding of things. So what we wanted to talk about was just what is allowed right now in our zoning versus what we would like it to be. What levers, what would trigger any levers that would have to be reviewed by one of us or one of the boards, so that we don't allow overbuilding. And we just wanted to see like what is allowed right now as of right. And as of right, there is no definition, a real clear definition and dimensional definition of a story or a half story. And the definition for a half story is very, very different from any other towns in that, anything, what was it, like something about 3 feet and in a
Yeah, intersection, right.
totally different from most other towns and how they define it. And so what happens is, we see 30-foot story buildings that are called, 1.5 stories. So we wanted to see what we could do to like trigger something to be reviewed, or put a form-based kind of a thing in language so that people can't build beyond what we would like to see. So what we had to define what story was, and a story, it seems like what most towns are defining is floor to floor, right? That distance. And some people define it as, a clear, just a clear, and it has to be a minimum of 7 feet. I think by code, Cheryl, if that's correct, is 7.6, right? But in like utility closets or kitchens or I think bathrooms, even 7 feet is minimum. But then is there a maximum? So like, could you put a maximum? Could you build like a 15-foot story and then call that a story? And a lot of towns, have some cutoff point. And, we were suggesting maybe it seems like a 14-foot, cutoff would be seemingly pretty great. A 9-foot ceiling, a floor to floor would be about like what, 10 and a half. So, a 14-foot would allow you to have a 12-foot, 13-foot ceiling height, which is humongous, right? And if you can't build any more than that, come see one of the boards and see if you can get approved. But 14 seems to be pretty good.
Well, and so then, Yicheng, one of the other things, and I appreciate the amount of studying of what you've done from what I sent over, but is the habitability of a half story. And
we're not there yet, though. But then
that's right.
But so the half story would then have to, the calculation of that would be, are we talking about the habitability? So you would call it a habitable place if it were 7 foot. And do you have those 3 points that Brian wrote out? I kept asking for it, Sally, that those 3 things that after our meeting, he sent over like these 3 points, 3 lever points. So like if it, so we were thinking like the half story cannot be greater than the story below it, right? I mean, that could
I do have them right here.
Levers. So but you can't build a, floor to floor height of 12 feet and then like floor to ridge, top of ridge, 18 feet or something like that.
Right, here's my notes. So what we said is that we need to define the height of each story, that it would be good to limit the height per story, and it would be good to limit the percentage of square footage in a sloped ceiling room that is deemed required for different categories of use, right? Like storage versus habitability. And that we said that the gross floor area would measurements, and that's why in this chart that I did, there's a lot of discussion about how gross floor area of a house is calculated, and with regards to inclusion of the attic. And it varies from town to town, but one of them is what percentage of the space in the attic has headroom of a certain amount.
Right. So we're suggesting maybe a half story would be counted from 40 to 60% above 7 feet.
That's right.
That would be the limit. And if we're gonna try to encourage ADUs in the future, then maybe a higher percentage would be better, a 60%. So your pitch could be you know, a little bit shallower and
Right, and the reason that I included
habitability.
dormers in here is because that's another factor, that this is what pushed it, was the 9 York Road thing of wanting to create more habitable space in his house. As it turns out, he has a very low ridge beam, and I'm not sure how much he's going to gain that's legally habitable, but that is part of, it's all conflated in that.
Yeah. So the bigger picture is that we don't have like a, it's not, our code isn't as clear as many other towns. And so we're trying to see if we can use language to define it, or graphics. So like Newton has great graphics, Somerville has great graphics, and to figure out a way to make it more clear so that, you know, the building commissioner or the building, is his name?
Yes, building commissioner.
Yeah, you can scroll to Newton because after Winchester, they're alphabetical.
Okay, so I want to, there's a lot in here, and I scanned a bit of this.
Yeah. So the point was to just get and to begin with story and half story, but then to look at other towns and see how we can massage our code to be more clear and more in line with what we want to see in town, but also then to continue on with the other things that Sally was looking into, like dormers.
Let me try to take a step back here and try to understand what a product might be.
Yeah.
So would we start by trying to redefine story?
I think that question would be asked once we start to talk about the half story. So I don't think that we have really defined story yet in our code. As I mean,
right.
So I'm just trying to pull on a string and this huge ball of twine. That's the,
can you remind us why the half story definition, why it was realized that the half story definition needed to be redone?
That was going to be my question.
Well, yeah, because there were all these proposals that were out of scale, or you know, as of right, they could have done it, but it was.
But what was the impact of those
those
as of right proposals that were against? Was it? Are we talking about design? Like we didn't like the pitch of the roof? Or
yeah, there's a statement that we are trying to prevent the appearance of 3-story buildings in certain areas. Wherever it says 2.5-story max, it's because we wanted to prevent the look of a full 3-story building.
Or even for accessory, you know, buildings. It was garages or whatever.
I'm gonna draw on my screen, and hopefully you can see it. And so this actually was the half story definition.
Can't see it.
Yeah, I haven't started drawing yet.
Oh, okay.
The half story definition, I feel, has been problematic for a while because it's hard for people to understand what it means. And I recall that earlier this year, when we looked at a design, both I Ching and Sally were like, that's not a half story, that's a story. And we're like, well, technically it's a half story because
scroll down to Newton's pictures because they're really good, and it will support what you're doing, what you're saying.
So let me just oh, for Pete's sake, I can't.
You have a thumb icon.
Yes, I do, but I can't draw anything because it says it's not. I need to free drawing line, and then it's 0 pixels. That's why. Okay. So the idea is that here, can you see the pink line?
Yeah.
Okay,
wow.
So ignore the background. So the idea is that if this pink line is 3 feet, then all you care for it to be a half story, the bottom of your rafter has to touch the top of that line. So I could go like this, or I could go like this, or I could go like this. And
like the house next to the boat club.
All of those things can be a half story, right? So the problem is that this definition, it kind of says you kind of have to have a sloped roof, but it can be really tall. And so the question is, one of the designs that came before us was where they chose exactly 3 feet for this intersection point, and they drew a roof that was pretty tall because it's allowed. You could go up to 14 feet with this, and I don't think anyone would call that a real half story.
Right.
So So that's where this kind of came from, is I suggested that we look at this. And I think that both I Ching and Sally have really gone to town on this and looking at both, is it a design thing? Is it a habitability thing? What is it that we really mean by a half story? Why do we care if it's a half story? And so that's.
And if I can add to that, we also care about defining the decisions that we make are opportunities for us to advance our goals about density in town.
I mean, I think, oh, what time is it? It's 21:41. Good, we got 10 more minutes.
You understand why I said that the decisions that
because
we make?
because the ADUs?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, but we're also talking about shooters, just scale, right?
That's right. And so it's aesthetics as well as density, like with Cheryl's focus on the aesthetics of the buildings coming into town. Well, all of our focus, frankly, has to not be compromised by the decisions that we make with regards to half stories.
Cheryl, did that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm fine reading it as carefully as I can.
Well, I'm not sure which town we're looking at. What's alphabetically above Concord?
So I don't understand the chart though. Like, what?
Go back to the chart and I'll tell you. The chart simply says, like, if you go down the Belmont column, just picking a random column, I was able to find in Belmont's zoning bylaw definitions a definition for basement or basement space or area, and in Belmont a definition for cellar. I didn't find a definition for dormer anywhere except Winchester, Lexington, Needham, and Newton. Or if you go all the way down to the bottom where it says story, comma, half, that row of check marks is all the towns that actually did take a stab at defining a half story. And so a simple exercise is to simply, for each of, I mean, I could send you just those paragraphs tomorrow morning and we could bring it to our next meeting to see what we like and don't like. The reason that I did this other exercise that was such a deep dive was because we realized, Brian and I Ching and I realized that the definition of half story as we define it has a ripple effect on other things.
And I just think a lot of the stuff that were written in the code, we just haven't been examined in a while.
That's right.
And it's all kind of piled on. I mean, I think that one of the important things you brought up is how do we define gross floor area?
Well, and it depends. It's different calculations based on different parts of the code. Do you include the garage? Do you not include garage?
Right.
And in some towns, gross floor area doesn't even include things like a subsidiary room, like a bathroom or an entry hall. I'm like, really?
Right,
Yeah.
but if we're concerned about how it looks on the outside or how it feels, we would be concerned with all the built parts, including the garage.
That's correct. That's
So
correct.
yeah, so
So the reason I brought all these definitions into play is because of the ripple effect of us understanding. So say we come up with a definition for half story. Let's make sure that it is intelligently integrated with our definition of the other things that are listed on the left. And look to other towns that did realize they needed to define those things, because otherwise it was a can of worms, ball of string.
right. I would highly recommend that as you start looking at language, that you perhaps start with principles that you want to follow, why you want to do something.
Exactly.
And so that when you write the language, one of the problems that I have had with our zoning bylaw is we really don't understand why particular language was used, and it was used to solve a particular problem, but we no longer know what that problem was, and we don't know why it was written that way. So, you know, I would love it if, as we move forward with new zoning, we also include sort of the legislative history and context as to why this strange calculation is used.
Or what principle are we trying to effect? Like somewhere in our zoning bylaw, it says, so that we can prevent the appearance of a 3-story building. And that's where it calls for 2.5. And where garages can only be 1.5, It's so that we can prevent the appearance of a two-story building.
So it's 9:46, and moving forward, if we continue with the subcommittee, just continue to massage the language or see what these the text evokes and what priorities it sort of shows up, and then present it in the next meeting or something.
Yes, that would be excellent. Thank you. That would be the next step.
Teaching, I accept.
Okay. So thank you for pointing out the time, I Ching. I think we can now, let's see, we actually are at, let me see if I can rediscover our agenda. I'm going to go like this. Will my screen do this? Yes, it will. Where is our agenda? Here it is. Okay, so here we are at the agenda, and our next thing we want to talk about is design consultants. And so in the past, well, in the recent past, we have made the board has made a decision to have a design consultant available for quick turnaround projects. So that, for instance, I think that if our budget is less than $10,000, Brian will of course know this much better than I, we don't have to go out for a bid. And so the ability to have someone who we know we can go out to and say, we need your expertise on this one project. Can you start in a week or 2 weeks? And they can come in and do so.
Like a peer review.
It's like a peer review, or for instance, we've worked with Dennis Carlone quite a bit. And for instance, when we were originally, when the Abbey Road project came up, when we were looking at trying to find alternate designs for that land, which might include more housing or different types of housing, we asked Dennis to come in and draw up some charrettes as to what he thought was possible based on the landscape and the size of, so we pulled him in very quickly to give us some ideas. So we have so Dennis has been our consultant for a while, and I think that he's done a great job. I think that one of our goals might be to branch out and see if there are other people that we think might be helpful to us. In the past, we actually reached out to several people, and we did get back some offers, and we sort of never followed up on them.
Did you do interviews?
We would do, yeah. So the idea would.
Did you in the past?
Oh, did we? My memory fails me. I apologize. I don't recall. I know that we looked at their portfolio. They submitted letters and their background and their portfolio. I don't recall if we went to the next level and did interviews, but that would certainly be what I think we should do, which is let's try to find people who are willing to work with us. We don't necessarily have them on retainer, but we would have them saying, hey, are you willing to come in a short period of time to work on a project?
Right, to give us a peer review report and then move on.
Yeah. So in some cases, these people, if there is a project and we could get 4353G, that would help with the costs, but otherwise it would come out of our budget.
Right, and so if it's a 53G, it's at the expense of the petitioner, and it is at the request of the planning board to provide their particular, field of expertise opinion about what's being put before us.
Yeah, and one of the things to note is that often, I don't know if it's a permanent arrangement, but for instance, lately when the ZBA has requested a 53G consultant, they've come to Brian, and Brian would manage it. And they would probably, I believe they said, who is it that you would suggest? So having a list of candidates would, people would come, and typically if we've done the research, people would come and ask us who we might recommend. So that's where this comes in. So
I'm going to pull up, if I can share a document that I had sent out before, Diab, if you would allow me to share my screen.
let's see if that's possible. Let's see what happens. Oh, so far.
Let me make this map.
So just so everyone knows, we're just starting this discussion.
Mhm.
And obviously we would like people to provide, how the heck do I allow you to share your screen? Oh, I have to make you a co-host.
Okay.
You are now a co-host.
Okay, so now I have to get to my share button. So let me find my share button. Here it is. Share screen. Oh, where did it go? Here it is. Okay. Let me make that go away. Okay, so this document here is something
Yeah.
that I sent out in April. You can see that.
Sally, we're not seeing your screen.
Oh, okay. Now I'm going to try share screen again. Now see, when I do share screen, hold on. Why do I not know how to do this? Well, because I've never done it before.
Sometimes there's a delay.
Microsoft Word accessory.
There we go.
Okay, good. Yay. Okay, so this is these are none of these people came from my recommendation. I simply went through all my notes.
Sally, we're not seeing this. We're seeing something about ADUs.
Okay, let me try again. Let me close everything else. Oh, get that go away. Let me make everything else go away.
Okay, so I think the key thing here is that we would like to start. I know Sally has a list of people, I believe, that she has.
Yeah, all I wanted to say was that the thing that I wanted to say about this document is it covers a lot of different expertises, because those are the kinds of expertises that the planning board would want to call upon. I don't know how to share. I'm really sorry. You guys have this document in your file.
Yeah, Sally, I'm just curious where you got the list from. I mean, I worked with. I mean, I worked at one of the firms that you mentioned, but I'm sure I know some of the people, and I'm sure Cheryl or
Right. So that list came from me. That list came from just me going through, me taking notes from conversations with people over 2019 and 2020, like listening to planning board meetings, and I combed my notes, 2 years of notes, and I put it all together.
I mean, it's an interesting, list, because I mean, I shared it with my friend who works at the BRA, or what was formerly called the BRA.
Oh yeah, good.
She was able to look through it and was like, yes, no, like whatever. She was able to even just eyeball it and be like, okay, these people are good with this, that. So, it's that was a great resource too.
And so what you see where it says like number 9, Goody, I don't know if you can see my screen now or not, but number 9, Goody Clancy, there's 3 words after their name. God, how do I share screen?
Well, why don't we focus since we are running out of time here.
I just wanted to make a point about this. After each person's name, there is the expertise that they list on the front page of their website. So it will say one firm, and then it will say architecture, urban design planning. Next one, it says architecture, planning, preservation. Next one, restoring and renovating historic buildings, right? So I put the expertises that they claim on their homepage in the list. And it's gratifying to know, I Ching, that some of the names on this list, when you did just run it by your professional community, that they could nod their heads at some of them. That's good.
So I think that moving forward, why don't we start, if it's okay with people, this sounds like a good list to start with. And why don't, if you have other suggestions, just send them to Brian, and we'll put them in a matrix so we can actually see them all, and we'll have, columns for whatever their expertise is, and we can put check marks so we can compare them. And then why don't we work towards bringing some people in? We can do a short list, I think, maybe in a couple weeks, or, we can have another couple go-arounds on this. I don't think we need an incredible amount of discussion on this, but why don't we create a list of people. I'm horrible with calendars. It is, let me see what, I can do it on my, I don't know if you can see my screen. Can you see that calendar? Maybe not. I don't know. Nope.
Are
Okay.
you talking about what the date of our next planning board meeting is?
I'm trying to guess when I'm trying to plan when we can actually move forward on this.
August 3rd.
So that's all I'm trying to do is to come up with a calendar that everyone can see that is actually somewhat useful. Oh, that is not useful. Let me turn all of the calendar off. No, show all calendars. No, stop showing any calendar. Show only. Okay, let's just do this one. Okay, great. So today is the 20th. And so, oh, this is not useful. My apologies. So this is the 20th. Why don't we try, I mean, we've got the work on the article for fall town meeting. I think we're going to need to spend a bit of time on that next time we bring it up. So I think we should have at least half an hour to 45 minutes on that. To go over the consultants and maybe come up with a short list. Why don't we work on trying to get a complete list together in a couple of weeks so we can circulate it around to people, and then people can make comments, and then we can come in the meeting after that and maybe come up with a quick short list. And then we can start scheduling interviews probably in September, I would think, because I don't know if any people will be around in August. August is kind of not a great time to do interviews.
It's kind of like December. Everybody's otherwise occupied.
Yeah, and it's hot and bothersome. So if that's an okay schedule with people, I think we should definitely keep this moving forward.
So the action item is that the four of us would put ideas into a common conversation. We won't discuss it. We'll just gather them all.
I suggest anyone that you consider would be someone we should work with. Just send it to Brian.
Great.
And Brian and I will assemble it into a document that we can use to compare people, and then we can rank them at that point, come up with the top 5 or
Great.
So, however many, and then we would go and do interviews, see if they're interested. They may not be, and then do some interviews.
And specifically in terms of fields of expertise, the names that I cobbled from my notes cover the different expertises that are on that document.
Yeah.
So that's what we want to make sure we think across all our needs.
Exactly, right. So let's use that document sort of as a framework for what expertise we need, and let's just go to town.
Action item. Okay, good.
Okay, so that is, I believe we have made it to the end of our agenda, and if I can find it again, there it is. Am I sharing?
Yeah.
Oh, well, for some reason I thought I was sharing. That's why my calendar didn't help you. You couldn't see it. So anyway, so let's just be official. There it is. There's our agenda. I think our action items are, to sum up, we have Sally and I Ching will continue to work on the half story, where it takes them in the next couple of weeks. Let's continue thinking about vision statements for the master plan, implementation committee, or a mission statement. And Sally, you said you were going to take a crack at that.
I will take a stab at it.
And Cheryl, you said you would maybe send some email Sally's way with some of your ideas. Then let's all make a promise to look at all of those meeting minutes so that we can get them off of our agenda next time.
Right, if they can be sent to us, that will help.
Yeah, I will make sure that they should. Yeah, the new ones will. I apologize. I was confused as to when those came out. So that's.
Are we just not getting packets before meetings anymore, or am I just not?
It was an electronic packet this week. I went to pick it up
last week too, or last time too. I thought.
Yeah, so it's a question of the board. Does the board want paper, or do they want? I mean, it's been a little confusing. If you want paper, I would.
When there's architectural or landscape architectural or engineering plans that need to be looked at, I really prefer that printed copies of those plans come to us.
That feels especially like cumbersome to me when they're,
Well, why don't we do it this way?
Oh, I'm sorry, I Ching, you would rather not have the
I would rather see them digitally because it just takes up so much space and there's so much paper. But if you don't have the means to do that on another screen, I can see why it would be easier to see
Yeah,
them.
I just have a tiny little Mac screen that I use.
So let me make this suggestion, since they're all, we have them digitally as well as physically, because they are required to submit both of them. If you have a preference, reach out to Suzanne Gill and let her know what your preference is, since she's the one who puts the packets together. So if you want paper, let her know. If you don't want paper, let her know. And then that's up, each person can get whatever they want.
That's terrific.
Okay, so I think we haven't had to take a vote at all today, so we should at least have a vote to adjourn.
So just one last comment about the packet.
Yeah,
They tend to be incomplete. Like today's packet didn't have meeting minutes in it, and
There was a packet today? I went today.
It was an electronic packet. It came by
Okay.
email on
Yeah.
Friday.
I'm just talking about what Suzanne Gill sent out.
Mhm.
So the
I
packet
think,
that she sent out was purely the Rocky Ledge piece with the agenda at the front. But no-
right,
And his letter and a site plan at the back. Yeah,
Okay,
that's
so what
exactly
was-
right, Cheryl.
right. So what was missing were the meeting minutes, and so that I think in the past they have, when they were predominantly paper, we just assumed that you would hold on to them. And again, the June 22nd and July 6th, I don't know if they were officially supposed to be on this. I don't know how they are they're on this agenda. Perhaps just for completeness, I don't know. I'll have to ask Brian. I know we said we want to put all the meeting minutes on the agenda so we don't forget them. But the June 8th ones were in a previous packet from a few weeks ago. So I guess what we should do is ask that everything be in the packet regardless. So let
I
me,
think that if Suzanne's putting an agenda as the front page of the packet, everything on that agenda should be represented in the packet.
okay. So that's a directive to give Suzanne. I think that there was miscommunication about what was expected in the packet. So
Yeah,
let's,
and I just want to say that I don't believe that I've ever seen the June 22nd or July 6th minutes.
and you probably, yes, and all I'm saying is I specifically asked Nancy for those this evening because I couldn't find any minutes, and she was kind enough to send them all. And that's why you got them in email this evening.
Oh, I
And-
never even saw that email. I was out until right before the meeting.
Yeah, and I was, just because I had been confused, so I decided to share my confusion. So I'm gonna put a note that that all meeting minutes that are on the agenda should be in each packet. And I'll make sure that that we don't have a miscommunication about that with Suzanne.
Yeah, like the master plan implementation document, that if that had been in there,
Yep, that's good.
it would have been really helpful.
Yeah, and that's my fault. That's a document that I have been
Massaging.
yeah, and I've been trading back and forth. Brian's been taking notes during the meetings, and then he sends it back to me. And then so that really should be in the meetings. And again, I apologize for that.
No.
So let me, that will be in your next packet.
Can I just poll the board and ask, does everybody have access to the actual master plan document and the master plan action plan document?
No.
Okay,
Yeah, we got a copy, I thought.
yeah, I think, well, you and I did.
Oh,
because
Cheryl
we
came
were-
after, yeah.
So Cheryl, maybe Diab, you can help Cheryl get that.
Okay, right. And
One thing I would love to get also is a large map of the zoning, the zoning map. Like the one that Brian has in his office. The one that I can see online is tiny and I can't like zoom in and out. If I print
okay.
it, it's illegible.
Really
That's
difficult.
illegible, yeah.
I'm going to punt a little on this just because of my memory. So Cheryl, if you please send email to Brian and say you would like a copy of the master plan document. And I Ching, if you would please email Brian. If there are any documents you need, please just directly.
And Cheryl, it's also the master plan action plan. There's two
Yes,
docs.
Yes.
Plan and master plan
So
action plan.
just reach out to Brian. He is the keeper of documents, and his memory, and especially if you send it an email, is much better than mine. So, but I have noted that I will talk to Brian about making sure minutes are in packets. It's an action for me. And so
That's
I
really
think-
good.
is that the last of the cleanup items for this evening? Then I would welcome a motion to adjourn.
Second that.
He can't make the motion, so
Somebody's got a first step.
I'll move to adjourn.
I don't know who said that, please.
That was Sally.
To adjourn, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, that sounded like Cheryl.
Yep.
I can't see everyone on my screen, so unfortunately I don't know who speaks. And I'm okay. Roll call vote, please. Eaching Scott.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Sally Dale.
Aye.
Bill Wolf.
Aye.
Diab Jarius, aye. Thank you, Nancy Polcari, our intrepid recording secretary. Thank you, WinCam. Thank you, all the people out in the Peanut Gallery out in Winchester for putting up with us this evening, putting up with me this evening and my inability to run Zoom. And we will see you all in 2 weeks. Have a great 2 weeks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.